I've already done the layout, not to jump ahead of you, but to give you a clear idea of just exactly what the layout process is all about. If we only wanted to cover these walls, we could slap the tiles up anywhere. Wouldn't make any difference. But because the tiles are regularly shaped units, we're actually putting a grid on the wall, and its position can't be arbitrary. It has to be balanced. And the position of these lines determines where those tiles will be set. Now, to establish the location of the line, I use something called a tile joint dimension, rather than fool around with feet or inches. It's much easier to deal with, and it's the very first thing I do on each job. I begin by spreading out an array of tiles on a straight edge. Now, the tiles we'll be setting on the walls are standard 4 1/4 tiles, and they have a built-in spacing lug on the side, which will give me a grout joint of about a 32nd of an inch. Now, that's a little bit too narrow for me, so I'm going to use 1/8 inch spacers. That gives me a little bit wider joint. Now, once I have this tile joint dimension, I spread the tiles out against the straight edge and then space them with the individual spacers. Once this is done, I transfer these joint locations to the jury stick. I position the jury stick flush with the end of the first tile and then begin to mark off the location of the joints on the stick. And to make the stick more effective, I've put marks on both sides so I can begin measuring from either direction. Now let's see how this thing works. Now, there's a natural tendency to start with a full tile on one side and work to the other end. And let's see what happens here. We have our full tile. We have a cut that's going to be covering this window opening. It's larger than half size, which is fine. But then when we get over to here, we've got a skinny cut, and that's going to look bad. Now, one of the cardinal rules of tile setting is you don't want any tiles less than half size above the first row. And this clearly violates that, and it's going to look pretty bad. Now let's continue on over to the right side and see what happens. And over on the right side, it looks like we also have a cut that's less than half size. Okay, it's obvious that with the skinny cuts that we have here, this layout is not going to work. So what do? What you do is you play with this thing. You move it around. The guiding principle behind the layout should be to maximize the number of full tiles and minimize the number of cuts. And what I've done to develop the layout that you see here is I've started with a full tile here on this side of the jam to see what would happen. And look, full tile here, that's perfect. In addition, in the corner here, we have space for more than half a tile. We have a cut on the right side that's larger than half size. This wall, at least as far as our vertical stacks of tile are concerned, is perfect. To get the field tile on this side beyond our wet area and on the other side of the enclosure that it will eventually be installed, we'll use full tiles. The only problem we have on this job is right here, below the top of the pony wall. You can see here, if we continue this grout joint line down, look what's going to happen. We have the thickness of the setting bed here, the thickness of the tile, and what we're left with is this little skinny cut that's going to extend from top to bottom. So what can we do about this? What I'm going to do is I'm going to reach into my bag of tile tricks and create a cove in here with mortar. That way, instead of the little tiny cut, this surface here will just wrap right around into this pony wall. Now let's take a look at the rest of the pony wall. Okay, since this pony wall sticks out into the room, I don't want any cut tiles here. I want nothing but full tiles here. And in addition, even though we're putting a curve right here, we're going to be squared off here. So what we're going to have to account for is the thickness of the setting bed back against this wall and then bring our layout line towards the front. And to do that, we'll allow for about 5/8 of an inch there for the setting bed. Then we have full tiles right to here. I don't want to have to float that much mortar onto the face of this, so instead I can take off this piece of sheetrock, add on another 2x4, replace the sheetrock, and then prep it as I normally would for mortar. So between building out the cove and adding on to the face, we have full tiles all along the length of the pony wall. Just what we want. Now the last wall is the simplest of all. Since we have so much space to move around, to get our layout, I need only to allow for the thickness of the setting bed on the back wall, mark off my positions on the wall. Once I've established these marks, then take a level, center my bubble, strike a plumb line. I use the level to extend the other tick marks. This will ensure that all of the vertical lines are plumb. Horizontal alignment follows the same principles. At first glance, the jury stick tells me that I can position a full tile at the top of the tub and the windowsill. But the red line, which represents the layout I finally decided on, is about 1/4 of an inch different. Let me show you why. Now the level indicates that the tub is about 1/4 of an inch low on the left-hand side. If I produce my horizontal layout from the high side, there'll be a big gap down here on the left. So to eliminate that gap, I start my layout from the low side of the tub, which is to say I've lowered it 1/4 of an inch, made tick marks with the jury stick, and then scribed them out with a pen and the level. From the top line, I can extend the layout into the backsplash area with a jury stick. Also, I can continue it out around the pony wall. If I'm going to maintain full tiles here in the pony wall, I'm going to have to do some building up. And that'll involve both carpentry and mortar work. Now once again, I can use the jury stick here to continue the layout, one line in the center of the window and one line up by the header. Should be about all I need for the back wall.